walking the trail of death and darkness into resurrection. The trail begins at Genesis, before any grave was dug, before any man drew breath. Darkness was over the face of the deep. This first silence is more than a backdrop. It is the template. The same hush, the same formless stillness, becomes the way Israel would later speak of death, a descent into shadow, a lowering into silence, waiting for Yahweh's word to speak again. Then Yahweh Elohim formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. The picture is earthy. Man is dust of the soil, shaped into form, animated only when Yahweh breathes into him. Life is not self-sustaining. It is borrowed breath. Humanity's very existence is a covenant, soil wedded to Ruach, earth infused with divine wind. Yahweh set a boundary as the warning of death. From every tree of the garden you may eat, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and bad you shall not eat. For in the day you eat from it, dying you will die. The Hebrew phrase mot tamut, dying you will die, carries both immediacy and process. The moment trust with Yahweh is broken. The path toward death begins. The breath lingers for a time, but the seed of decay has been planted. Mot tamut is not redundant. It emphasizes that the moment you eat, the dying process begins, and it will culminate in death. The entrance of death came when man and woman ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and bad. Their eyes were opened. Shame entered. Awareness that they are now frail and mortal, and they hid from Yahweh. Yahweh's verdict follows. Cursed is the ground. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Death is not framed as an abstract legal penalty, but as the unraveling of life cut from Yahweh's breath. Animated soil becomes soil again. Where Ruach gives animation, Basar reminds of frailty. Man and woman are expelled from the garden, barred from the tree of life. The cherubim and flaming sword guard the way. Here lies the significant shift. Mortality is not merely a sentence. It is a severing from the path of life. Without access to the tree, death becomes the inevitable horizon. The spread of death follows. Cain rises against Abel, and death takes its first victim by human hands. The genealogies of Genesis 5 drum a relentless refrain, and he died, and he died, and he died. Mortality spreads through every generation. By Genesis 6, Yahweh brings the flood. So not only is death a consequence, it is also a judgment. The world, filled with violence, is swept away. Thus death, once a distant warning, becomes the universal condition. From now on, every tent must reckon with death. In Hebrew, the core word for death is mavet. In a concrete sense, it is to be cut off from breath and vitality. The body ceases, dust reclaims. So the baseline word is not abstract. It simply means the end of breath. In Hebrew thought, avad, destruction, is what follows death. The breaking down, ruin, loss of place, identity, or memory. The crossing into stillness, likened to the darkness before creation. With Torah's foundation set, the trail stretches forward through Israel's speech and imagery, revealing where death leads, how Yahweh's people understood it, and how men evolved it beyond Torah. The first marker is Kaber, the grave. Here, the body is lowered, covered by stone or soil, returning to dust. Sometimes the word is bor for pit. Other times, poets speak of shachath, corruption, ruin that consumes the flesh. Daniel calls it those who sleep in the dust of the earth, a phrase pointing beyond burial to awakening. For Judean exiles in Babylon, the Babylonian underworld was likely a vivid parallel, their own concept of being cast down, the pit. Later, Hebrew scribes developed the concept of Sheol, the hollow below. In early texts, it meant only pit, but evolved into the collective realm of the dead, similar to the Babylonian underworld. Babylonians believed all souls, righteous or wicked, descended to the same underworld, a dark and desolate realm beneath the earth, known as Irkala, called the earth of no return. No judgment, only a feeble, dusty echo of earthly life. So the thought becomes, beyond the family tomb lies Sheol, the unseen chamber beneath. As Sheol becomes synonymous with grave, Abaddon, ruin, the place of destruction, becomes synonymous with destruction. If Sheol is the hush, Abaddon is the collapse. One silences, the other dissolves. Babylonian parallels continued into the Second Temple period, the underworld as a realm of ruin, Namtaru, the bringer of plague, Gala demons, draggers into the underworld. When Israel's scriptures were translated into Greek, Hades was chosen to represent Sheol. Though drawn from Greek myth, the altered Hebrew concreteness remained, the hidden realm where the dead descend. The organic Hebrew scriptures also speak of the lowest pit, the prison place, Psalm 88:7, Ezekiel 26:20, Ezekiel 32:18, Isaiah 24:21-22, Jonah 2:6, and in the Textus Receptus, 2 Peter 2:4, rebellious heavenly beings confined until the day of Yahweh. Later, Greek influences brought more myth, the abyss, bottomless pit, prison of spirits, Tartarus, naming the deepest pit as a dungeon where rebellious angels are chained. From silence of the grave, the imagery turns to fire. Yeshua pointed to Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom, once a place of child sacrifice, later a refuse pit of flame. It became the parable of Yahweh's judgment, not silence, but burning away corruption. He also spoke of outer darkness, banishment from the feast, and of the worm that does not die, gnawing corruption paired with fire. Here, death is not mere silence, but reckoning. The covenantal end beyond the grave, the second death, the ultimate severing. For those outside the life of Yahweh, there is not only the first death of burial, but an ultimate unmaking, contrasted with the resurrection life of the faithful. In Revelation, the vision swells, the lake of fire, a fiery sea where not only those outside the life of Yahweh, but death and darkness themselves are cast, the final enemy undone. What began in Genesis as the intrusion of death ends with death's own destruction. Yet woven through this trail is hope. The Elohim who once spoke light into Genesis' darkness will speak again. The same voice that shattered the void will shatter the grave's silence. The graves will open. Dust will rise. Gehenna's flames will not consume the redeemed. Death and darkness will be thrown down. The second death will hold no power. The story that began with borrowed breath and broken trust does not end in silence. It ends in resurrection. Yahweh will call again, and soil once more will be filled with life.